Hi, everyone. We are so happy to be here today. I'm Amy Sager, and I'm here with Kim Ahlgrim. We're going to be talking about academic support services, how you can prepare your student for utilizing those in college and other educational endeavors, and what you can be doing at home right now with your high school students to prepare them to utilize these services to support them in their academic journey. I'm so excited to be here. We're going to take questions at the end after we've gone through a few topics here. So again, I'm Amy Sager. I'm on the IAHE board. I'm the Publications and Marketing Director here as well. And I'm here with Kim Ahlgrim, the Director of the Cove Academic Enrichment Center at Cedarville University. Hi, Kim.
Hi, thanks for having me today. This is fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad you can be here with us. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, maybe your journey, and how you got to working in this area.
Yes, I have been at Cedarville for over 25 years full time. I came into higher ed by being a resident director of a dorm and realized there was no other population I ever wanted to work with. I knew college students were the group that I wanted to be a part of. And then, so I spent a lot of time in student life. And then I moved into the academic area with a department that was being developed. And I've been in this role now for about 20 years. So it's just been a great journey, and it's all about helping students academically.
Oh, that's incredible. I love it. I love the history too of how God brought you into that role through kind of a different path and working in different areas. So I'm sure your experience there is valuable, and I'm really excited to dive into some of these questions. I think it'll be so helpful for homeschool parents, especially as sometimes as homeschool parents, we don't know the services that are available to our students and the kind of help that's even out there, let alone how to gain access to that help and support.
Right. I'm excited about it because there are a couple of things that I think I really wish that homeschool parents knew that are really simple fixes and things that you could do to help your student to just become even stronger at the college level. So I'm excited about talking about this topic.
Yeah, and I think sometimes by the time homeschool parents even start thinking about what's available or how their students can access support, they're at the end of their homeschool journey, right? So there's some things to be aware of a lot earlier in the process. Right. All right, so let's start with, why are academic support services so important for students, and students especially who are looking to go into college or some type of higher learning?
Well, what is so fascinating, and people don't realize it, but there's a significant jump academically from high school to college. So the pedagogy, the learning, the strategies, where primarily goes to memorizing to critical thinking, and even just all the other adjustments that are going on in students' lives. It's a significant transition. So having a variety of support services, not just academic, but other places on campus, really make a big difference. And I think parents need to know what is available at the university that they're going to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you mentioned the big jump from high school to college, and it's not just a jump academically, but it's a jump socially, emotionally, physically, completely different living environment. A lot of students are moving out of their parents' homes for the first time. They're, engaging with new friend groups, new teachers. So a lot of adjustment.
It is a significant adjustment, and it's difficult, I think, for any college student or anybody going to any other type of learning environment. They may not be going to college. They may be going, to another state to be involved in another type of learning environment. It doesn't matter. It is a major life transition. I love being a part of that process.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad. I think the support services can be so helpful for families. So tell us a little bit about some of the most significant challenges when students are moving from a homeschool environment to a college learning. We've kind of broadly mentioned them.
Right.
But
so the big ones these are for all students, But we have, so the big ones for all students is this academic transitioning and, being, time management and all that. But we have noticed this pattern with students who have been homeschooled. And sadly, what it's about is that in homeschooling, you're learning for learning's sake. But when you jump to a university level, it's timed learning. So where in homeschool, you have the time to write what you know, and you're really getting a good base of what the student knows. But at the college level, it's totally different. So you only have 50 minutes to do a test versus maybe an hour or two. So the big ones we've seen are the academic adjustment. So that's taking time tests. It's also about strict deadlines. So you might have a paper, but at the school level, there are certain dates, and if you don't have those turned in on time, you may drop a letter or two. The other things are note taking. Some students, and a lot of students, once they know what they need to do, they've got it. The students, homeschooled students, all students, they can adapt, but some have a more difficult time. So it's note taking. And then the other big area is time management of projects. So at the university level, you might have 5 major projects due by Thanksgiving. So it's this back planning that needs to take place rather than, okay, I'm going to work on this project, get it done, work on this project, get it done, or however it's set up. Those are the big ones that we have seen. And I think there's some really easy fixes for that.
Yeah, it's so true. As homeschoolers, we embrace our freedom and we love it. And you're right. I love how you said we love learning for learning's sake, which is wonderful with our kids. But I like to tell parents that when we're teaching our kids in our home, we are absolutely free to teach them in the way that's best for them. And we should teach them in the way that's best for them. But if we know that our kids are going on to study in some other institution or work in some other environment, then we have to play by that institution's rules. And so we need to prepare our children for engaging by those rules and in those circumstances, right?
Right. Homeschool students come to us every single week. And so we're teaching this new skill. And I'm like, let's get this skill going in high school. Let's do some time tests if you are going to college and the institution, and maybe even, time some of the projects, or maybe even taking, dual enrollment, taking a class at a community college, because that has deadlines. And then they're starting to develop or see what it's going to be like at the college level. Very simple things, even note taking. Note taking is really difficult for all students, but it kind of ramps up with homeschool students because they haven't had that experience, that pattern. For some do it, but I would say, practice that skill, teach them the different ways to do note taking, whether it's sketch noting or any other way. Like practice some of those skills, so it's not a brand new skill when they get here at the university level or wherever they're going.
Yeah, that's great advice. So like note taking, if they watch a video or they watch a lecture or they read a part of a textbook or even a novel or anything, practice, making a bullet pointed list, or like you said, sketching things out, or some form of note taking from that media, right?
Right. And what's great about the homeschooling environment is on all these things, you're going to be able to check it. How are they doing timing the test? How are they doing managing their priorities in their project? How are they doing with their note taking? Like, you get to speak into those things, and you can strengthen that skill before they even get here, which I think is fabulous.
Yeah. So good to think about. So I know some parents hear like tests, and they hear, oh, that's one thing you mentioned that homeschool students can struggle with, is adapting to all of the time tests. And here in Indiana, testing is not required for Indiana homeschoolers, which is so great. And we're so happy about that. But I think, again, same thing, when they're in our home, that's great. And we can have the freedom to adapt learning to our kids, but we have to prepare them to be able to work in a different environment. So maybe exposing them to some of these tests just for practice is a
Exactly.
good idea, right?
Exactly. That would be fabulous.
Yep, that's good to know. Good advice. And then you mentioned dual enrollment too. Another great way to expose kids to college level work, maybe one course at a time when they're in a home learning environment and can have the support of their parents, right, to learn how to work through those.
Right. And it's beautiful because, again, as their teacher, you're watching them, you're monitoring that and seeing how they're doing. You're not doing it, but you're watching how are they doing with turning things on time and managing these things and back planning and taking tests and doing homework. You get to monitor that to see how they're doing before they even get to, maybe university level.
Yeah, that sounds great. So how can academic support services help students, and what do students and parents need to think about if they're
Sure.
researching, colleges or other institutions? Like, what sorts of things should they look for?
Yeah. I think any parent taking their student on, whether they're looking online, whether they're doing college visits, this is a question they need to be asking. The things that I would be asking for or looking at, what do they offer regarding tutoring services? Some universities will only do tutoring for the freshman year or the freshman sophomore year, or maybe it's only one class a year, 1 hour a week or something like that. So what do they actually offer? And we'll talk about what Cedarville offers, but I think there should be a variety of options. Also, is there a writing center? That's a significant one for students and for all students. So having tutors to be able to go to in a writing center. Another, math and science are always our largest ones that we get asked for help. And so is there a math lab? And what are the hours? Are there enough hours? Is there academic coaching? And if your student has a disability, what is the disability services process like? So there's a lot of different things you could do. And if you're working with an admissions counselor at any university, you can ask them those questions too. So go online, talk to the admissions counselor, talk to students who are already at that university if you know them. So there's a lot of different ways you can find out, but make sure those services are available, because this generation is absolutely amazing in asking for help like no other generation. And I think that is so great that they're not afraid to say, hey, I need to get tutoring. A students are getting tutoring just to keep up their scholarships. It's just really amazing how this group of students, they're really reaching out to use all the resources that are available.
That's great. And I want to touch on one distinction you made that I think is important for homeschool parents to understand. And that's that academic support services are for everyone, right? So
Yes.
They're not just for students with diagnosed recordable disabilities. Anyone can utilize academic support services, or they should be able to anyway, right? So
right. Every university should have a variety. And for us, like I always say, disability services like a spoke of a wheel. It's part of what some departments, it's spread out. We're all under one umbrella called the Cove. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and that's good to remember, because I think sometimes for homeschoolers, our kids can do really well in their education in our homes, but like we talked about, that transition out of our homes can be difficult. And some students might have never thought they would need any kind of tutoring or academic support, but when they get to college level work, they realize, wow, I need some help here. So it's good for everyone, whether you have students with diagnosed disabilities or not, to be aware of the resources available.
Absolutely.
And to prepare their students that it's fine. It's absolutely normal and okay, and a great thing to utilize those academic support services.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay. So what can parents of homeschooled high schoolers do now to help prepare their students? We talked about how a lot of homeschoolers just aren't aware of what's available till maybe the very end of high school when their kids are getting ready to graduate. But I think there's a lot more homeschool parents can be doing to prepare their kids to succeed after high school while they're still in high school. So
Sure.
It's a little bit about
I think there's a lot that is amazing that goes on already. So it's a matter of just adding to that piece, like, and I say this for all students, just those daily life skills, like, during their senior year, have them do their own laundry, manage their own budget, even those types of things, handling responsibilities. The one I say all the time, because sometimes well, I shouldn't say sometimes, this happens a lot. Stop waking your student up in the morning. Make them get up, and don't be the one that go, okay, time to get up. Let's go. Breakfast. No, make them get up, because over and over and over again, when students come here, and this is, many students, adjusting to that big change of, someone not waking you up, whether you go to a public school, private school, or, you go to school at home, homeschool, is getting up and managing your life is really, really important. So those daily skills, because the more, like, even just teaching them how to do laundry, by learning that skill, they're not developing and figuring that out when they get here. So that's a big one. The other, the big one, this is for all students, but so we know, like Bloom's taxonomy in high school, a lot of it is memorizing, which that's the space of where that learning is. But what happens is there's this massive jump into higher ed where it changes to critical thinking. And that's a significant change. So many students don't even know that verbiage. So by just teaching, even in their senior year, even if they have a month left of school, teaching this concept of, okay, this is what it means to study for a test that's different than just memorizing the facts. Teaching critical thinking is significant. You'll give them a big head start on all students, just introducing that. And then also just self-advocacy, making sure they are, let's say they have a doctor's appointment. Instead of you calling to make that doctor's appointment, have them call and make that doctor's appointment. It's they're taking care of things that they need to manage in being advocates for themselves. So those are just a few of the big ones for us.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't have even thought of that with doctor's appointments and kind of their health, and really learning to manage that, because you're right. That's a big part of it when you leave home and go to college or somewhere else is managing your health, your doctor's appointments, your diet, your exercise, how you're taking care of yourself. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
That's good. I like that you mentioned the critical thinking piece too. It reminds me of when my kids were little and we were reading books, and my questions would, be more about, what was the name of this character, or what day did this character do this, or just very basic comprehension type questions, right? But as they get older, you want to move into more critical thinking type questions and ask more why, right? And test kind of their understanding of characters' motives, maybe, or something like that, to use the literature. So yeah, that's good. So I think there are a lot of practices parents can use to develop those critical thinking skills. So I appreciate you mentioning that. So that's good. So we've kind of talked a lot in general about academic support services, which, these can be helpful for students with disabilities and students without disabilities. But what about parents who have kids that maybe do struggle academically, or maybe they've gotten to college, they have some kids in college and they are struggling in that first year? What advice do you have for those parents?
Yeah, it happens. It always happens. And so the difficult thing is not to rescue. You want them to problem solve. You want to encourage independence. We need to listen to our students and hear them, but allow them to come to what the answer is. And what's difficult is we might know the answer, but they're the ones that have to take those steps, to get tutoring, to go to medical services if they're sick, that type of thing. So it's this encouraging independence But also, I always say this because this generation is also known to have, the research says, very high anxiety and fear and depression. So
Yes.
you have to be listening for, like, how are they? Because at some point, if it goes beyond just regular normal developmental adjustment to college, if you have a student who's talking about, where death sounds better than life, or they're incredibly depressed, that is the time to step in, get the university involved. And that's when, it doesn't matter about anything. That has to be a priority. And that is at any university. So it is finding that discernment as a parent of, how do I help and encourage? Don't rescue, but when do I need to step in when it's life-threatening?
Yeah, that's very good. That's good encouragement. And it fits with what we've talked about, how we want to encourage our kids to become more and more independent through high school, not only in their academic learning, but in all areas of their life, so that they're more prepared for that transition to college. So
Absolutely.
if we have students that have known disabilities, so for homeschoolers, they can get ISPs. There's ways to get different help when they're young and when they're children. But when we're looking at potentially needing accommodations or academic support in college, that's going to look a little bit different. And I think for a lot of homeschool parents, they don't maybe think about these things until it's later in high school, or they realize their kids get to college and they realize, wow, they really need help. What am I doing? So when our kids are younger, middle school, early high school, what can homeschool parents be thinking about if they think their child has a disability that needs to be diagnosed, or that they're going to need accommodations for?
Right. It's really great to be thinking those questions. And this is for all students, because we get a lot of students who come here, which maybe they were able to cope and be able to make it through high school. But then when it ramps up to another level, that disability has changed the picture some. So all schools have a disability services. I don't know one that doesn't. And each one maybe has a different process. But the thing that is the same is you do need to have that diagnosis. And so, that could be in a packet of 15 pages. It could be a packet of 5 pages. But, we're looking for what, not only, what the diagnosis was, but how do they come to that diagnosis? So what you do is you go online, and most places you can just apply for services online, upload the documentation, and then it's a conversation with someone from Disability Services. We call it an interactive process. So you meet with someone, you talk about, maybe what you did in high school, what the documentation says. And sometimes we find students don't even realize that they could ask for something, because we look at what they have and like, hey, maybe you should be using this service too. And maybe they didn't use that in high school. So that conversation is really important. So it is a process. It does involve documentation. But if you're thinking your student may have something and you just haven't done any testing before they get to college, if you're even thinking about it, I would say get that done during their junior and senior year. We're always looking for documentation with 3-4 years out. Usually it's every 3 years documentation gets renewed. So get that support, figure it out before you get here.
Yeah. So do you recommend that students connect with potential colleges or even places they're going to go before they have testing done to see what is required? Or if they generally, how do they find out what kind of testing is required without talking to specific colleges first?
Yeah, we find most universities, if you would go to their website and type in disability services, they have that information on their website. So ours says what documentation we're looking for. Ours says what the process is. So we don't make accommodations I'm saying this generically, I'm sure some people do it differently, but mostly, you wait until you deposit, finish your senior year, and then in the summer, apply for services. Now, students with significant needs, maybe it's hearing, maybe it's something else. We say, hey, during your senior year, reach out to us and we'll start that process early. But usually in the summer to start that process, but online, or just connect with the disability services and say, hey, what is your process? We get people coming all the time to ask us those questions, and I'm sure other places have that too.
Oh, that's really good to know, because I think a lot of homeschool parents, they get concerned because the testing for homeschoolers can cost a fortune, unfortunately.
Right.
It's very expensive. So I think they want to make sure they understand what testing is actually required. So that's good to know that they can usually look at the disability services websites.
And I would caution what we have discovered. There are a lot of fake sites out there that are scams taking people's money. And it's basically a self-diagnosis, and you pay money and they're providing documentation and it's fake. So just make sure you have a place that's reputable, and maybe you talk to your local school, you talk to someone in your homeschool group, maybe that has done that, to make sure you're going to a place that is, they're not just going to take your money.
Wow, that's really good to know about. Okay, so beware.
Yes, beware.
Beware. That's good. We talked a little bit about self-advocacy before, but I just want to touch on it briefly again, because it is something important for homeschoolers to know that, in a homeschool environment, parents are used to having a lot of say over their children's education, their activities, their decisions. We sometimes can speak a lot for our kids just because we're in this very close-knit environment. But once students leave our homes and are seeking either accommodations, disability services, academic support, self-advocacy is really important, because at that point, a college or another institution is going to be working with that student directly, not through the parents, right?
Right. And there's laws called the FERPA law, where how you can't talk to a student or to parents without that student signing, a waiver saying that's possible. So there's that at the college level. At ours, we have like a code, and the parent just has to do the code. But I would, as much as you can, let them go. And they're going to fall. They're going to falter. They're not going to do it exactly the way we would do it. And that's a tough one, and it's say, you got to go to the Cove, you got to do this. Well, they may not. And that's tough. And instead of getting, B's, A's, they might be getting B's, and that's tough too sometimes to see. But they've got to take their own steps. And I think that's a life skill, being able to develop that autonomy and managing their life, because once they finish school, they're going to be doing that on their own, in their marriages and with their children and their church and their community. And so it's important to encourage that communication with them and letting them advocate for themselves as much as possible.
That's so important. Really good. Really, really helpful. I'm glad you pointed that out. Great. This has been wonderful. We're going to take some questions in just a minute if we have some questions. But Kim, I wanted to just ask you to tell us a little bit more about Cedarville specifically, and what are some of the services that you specifically offer there? What should homeschool parents be aware of?
Yeah, I love my job. I love coming to work every single day, working with college students. We've got a great team. How we started our department is we spent the first year listening to students. We asked them a ton of questions. We did brainstorming sessions, because we thought if we make a department based on our generation, it's not going to be what they need. So ours space, and so there's color on the wall. It's a really relaxed space. There's glass windows. So even our environment is really a relaxed environment, a welcoming environment. We have good chocolate. We have 2
That's
dogs
important.
in our department that are here every day, work day, and the students love the dogs. But what we did is we created services that students wanted. So we do have some courses that we provide. Then we have like programs and services. Our biggest one is tutoring. So like last year we did over 4,000 hours of tutoring done by about 100 peer tutors. So, thousands of hours of tutoring is happening. And when you're looking for another university, I would say make sure it's just not one type of tutoring program. Like we have review sessions. So the hardest classes we put peer coaches who do weekly review sessions. Sometimes we have 150 students in those. Sometimes there's 20. It just depends if there's a test that's coming up that next week. So that's important. That we have labs. So there's a variety of that. We have a couple of our faculty members in the Cove who do coaching. So it's not about content, it's about motivation and reading and test taking and time management and all those things. So ones that are there.
Wow, that's great. I think you had me at the chocolate and the dogs. But
see, and that's very intentional. I always say, if that can get them in the Cove, just walk into the Cove, get chocolate or get the dogs, I've hooked them, and then they're going to come back when they need us. It happens all the time.
I love it. Great strategy there. Well, it sounds like a lot of good support services that are really helpful to students. Just hook them in the door and then they're going to do great. So I love it. I appreciate it. All right. Well, I don't think we have any questions right now. You covered every topic so well. I really appreciate that. I'm excited for parents to be able to watch this recording in the future too. So I really appreciate your time. Any last advice or encouragement or anything you want to give to homeschool parents?
Keep doing what you're doing. It's such an important role in your child's life, whether you're homeschooling for a few years or you homeschool through the whole from kindergarten to 12th grade. That role is vital in their learning and in their development. So take courage that what you're doing is very important in their lives. And then when they go to college, they're going to be ready. They're going to do fine. Some will struggle, but that's why we have academic enrichment centers at university, people like me, to be able to help your students. So keep doing a great job in working with your children.
Thank you so much for that encouragement. I really appreciate that, Kim. And we appreciate what you're doing at Cedarville and all of the help and support you're offering students there. And hopefully more and more will take advantage of that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again sometime, hopefully.
Okay. Bye-bye.